US1 Radio News Time is 7:52. Morning Magazine with Bill Becker continues.
Thank you, Chuck. In a special segment right now, we are joined in the studio by Dr. Jack Norris, a local physician, and on the phone with us, Dr. Derric Nimmo, the chief scientist with Oxitec. And we're going to have a little talk about genetically engineered mosquitoes, tetracycline, and a whole lot more. Let me lead off. First of all, Dr. Norris, you have some concerns with respect to the tetracycline that's being used by Oxitec. Let me state your concerns here for us.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. I'm Dr. John Norris. I'm an internist in Key West, Florida. I'm a clinician. I am not a researcher. I have worked with researchers for many, many years, and basically my comments have been carried by the New York Times in their lead story back in October 13th, 1992, related to resistant germs. I've been on the nightly news with Brokaw as a expert in resistant germs. And what happened was my wife, who is very interested in the topic, handed me a piece of Oxitec information. And like the other doctors on the island, I had no idea that tetracycline was being used as mosquito milk for these quote-unquote sterile mosquitoes. They're not sterile. They breed. But if they don't get their tetracycline, they don't survive. They're a babyhood, just like if a baby doesn't get milk, it doesn't survive.
The tetracycline is used as a kind of a switch to switch the gene on and off, the fatal gene, right?
The way they demonstrated in the picture from Oxitec, and Derric, you can correct me, of course, but what it does is it deactivates the protein that basically kills the organism.
Okay. Now, what is your concern for that?
My concern is that if you look at the materials presented, and especially June 22nd, Mr. Doyle, the ex-director, he states that if I'm taking tetracycline full dose and for like a leg infection, if a female GM mosquito bites me, there's not enough tetracycline in my blood so that female could have a successful brood. That to me signifies a really impressive amount of tetracycline that is being given to these bugs, again, as mosquito milk. And there is very low consideration about the germs that are on them, around them, and so forth. And because of that, we have a massive concern here in the Keys with MRSA, Staph aureus, resistant to an antibiotic called methicillin. And all over the world, there is a massive concern about the growing epidemic of resistant bacteria, so much that the UN is having an emergency assembly meeting on the 21st of this month, specifically directed at the misuse of antibiotics and the development of a new super germ that is actually resistant to the backup antibiotics we saved.
Let me direct that to Dr. Derric Nimmo, chief scientist with Oxitec. Dr. Nimmo, can you respond to that, please?
Yes, of course I can. Yes, thank you. Pleasure to be here. Dr. Norris, yes, so the problem of antibiotic resistance is a significant challenge to health, and one we take very seriously. So does the FDA. Now, the FDA-led review team, which included experts from the Centers of Disease Control and the Environmental Protection Agency, have looked into this issue directly with tetracycline and concluded that the likelihood of the adverse effects associated with the development of antimicrobial resistance is extremely low and the risk is negligible. So the FDA, the CDC, and the EPA have all assessed this based on what you've said about the amount of tetracycline that we use, which actually is extremely low. So the amount of tetracycline waste from the rearing facility in the Keys, if we were rearing at maximum capacity, is less than what one person would take per day for treating acne or a chest infection. So it's a very low dose that we're using.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
No, please go ahead.
And so the FDA has assessed this and also assessed the where the tetracycline is used, the fact that there is already tetracycline-resistant bacteria in the Keys and in the environment and worldwide, and due to the use of antibiotics in humans and animals, and put that all together and come up with this, what they call a finding of no significant impact on animal health, human health, or the environment.
Dr. Norris?
Okay, I just showed Bill the FONSI. It's a finding of no significant impact. Page 4 of the FONSI basically states the possibility of superficial bacteria present on the body of the closed adults acquiring antibiotic-resistant genes due to rearing conditions at, and I'll call it the mosquito factory, is low as there is no causal pathway to occur. They talk, Derric, about acquiring. You and I have discussed the fact that I showed the antibiotigrams of Lower Keys Medical Center, where every culture that comes back positive shows the resistance of to various antibiotics of the germs that they grow there. To get a culture at Lower Keys, you got to be pretty sick. I mean, the people listening should realize that by themselves. Bottom line is, we're not saying that the genes are going to mutate because you put tetracycline on them. We're stating that I have a 9% resistance to tetracycline right now of the infections coming in, and that what you do when you put antibiotics on something, and anyone listening to me is used to this, if you take an antibiotic, you change your flora in your body. And when you change the flora, people start taking acidophilus, they start taking probiotics, they try and put it back. Well, when you... Basically, what I'm saying here is that you can't use an antibiotic blindly like this, and this FONSI that I have here, the 8 pages of it, basically says acquiring. They are leaving out the concept of promoting the resistance, and then you release millions of these bacteria-covered bugs all over an area in a way that, again, I know you don't like the word, like it when I say biblical, but in a biblical way, on 2 little streets. And the question we have, and what we asked you for, is we want to be able to study it. We asked you for some of your GMs, the adult to be released, and that's in the petition. We wanted to send them to an internationally known researcher, a PhD, at Rutgers University, who fingerprints the resistance of any bacteria that he finds, so that we know the difference between your germs from your mosquitoes, and we also want to nasal swab the people who are willing to do so. We're going to get their consent to check the resistance of the germs in their nose using MRSA as the canary in the coal mine.
Dr. Nimmo, is that possible?
Well, I think, as Dr. Norris knows, until our mosquitoes are actually approved, they are a regulated article. And we would encourage questions about safety review to be directed to the FDA, which regulates our technology. As we say, it's a regulated article where the FDA have approved that we can import this mosquito into a facility in the Keys, which has been inspected by the FDA and the CDC, and we got approval and protocols to transport that mosquito down to Key Haven and do releases. If we did anything outside of that regulated article, we could actually be prosecuted for that. So I would encourage Dr. Norris to, talk to people, get something together, but go to the FDA and put his proposal to them, which I believe he has already questioned the FDA about this. Is that true, Dr. Norris?
That is
raised
absolutely
this issue
true,
with
sir.
the FDA?
Matter of fact, we didn't get the usual response. When I asked them to clarify the issue of acquiring resistance versus promoting, I immediately got back an answer that they weren't going to address it in the FONSI any further. But when I sent the email about the study that was released in the American Journal of, and here you go, Bill, for that. That's that paper. The American Journal of Tropical Medicine and Hygiene on the 29th with Dr. Tesh. It basically states that that another issue, I was talking page 5 initially of the FONSI with the resistant germs, but also states on page 4 they don't take into consideration in that FONSI that that your mosquitoes were never tested for Zika, as you've told me on 2 occasions.
Is that possible that they could have Zika, Dr. Nimmo?
Well, no, not really, because it's procedural. So the strain of mosquito that we got was isolated from Mexico before Zika was even in the US. The strain is reared in the UK, where there is no Zika at all, and we send the eggs over to the Marathon facility. Those eggs are reared through to pupae, and the majority of the females are removed and they're killed, and then the males are released into the environment. So no, there is not really any way that strain can have or contract Zika before it is released.
So these,
and of course, males don't bite or transmit disease, so they have no way to transmit Zika either.
Okay, so these mosquitoes were caught in England. They weren't caught in Africa, as I believe you originally said. I've asked people if they can go back and look at their videos. As you know, you're taped an awful lot. And I've asked them to see if they could get the fact of where it was announced during the meetings being filmed at the Marriott, where the insects were caught. The other issue was that if you remember back, for those of us here who are locals, in 2009 and 10, when dengue broke out, the health department went door to door and cultured a couple hundred people's blood. When they cultured a couple hundred people's, I should say, they serologically checked a couple hundred people's blood, found 25% of those approximately had already been infected by the dengue and had no clue they did. There's been no such thing done with Zika here. The question I keep asking, and the doctors ask, is how long has this really been here? When you talk about neurological injury to children, we're terrified. We lived through the HIV explosion. But when you sit back and think about the amount of autism that's going on, the growing number, and the concerns that there may be viruses like this in the environment that may be causative to that, we're sitting back and we're saying, Dr. Nimmo, you can't sell a bug for treating Zika or combating Zika if you didn't check the bug for Zika.
Okay, Dr. Nimmo, we got to wrap this up, but your response to that?
Well, there is no Zika in the mosquito, and Zika has definitely not been around before the 2015 outbreak in Brazil. That would have been noticed. So, in response to that, Dr. Norris has a concern, and we encourage him to continue to research that concern and to talk to the FDA about the possibilities of addressing that concern. But we feel that the FDA has already addressed that concern.
Okay, well, Dr. Nimmo, thank you for joining us. Dr. Derric Nimmo of Oxitec and Dr. John Norris, local physician. Thank you for joining us today. Appreciate it very much. Okay.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you very much.